Okay, it should work now. Yes, I'm getting sound. Okay, so yeah, it's fixed. So anyway, you know, you don't check anything and you say it's worked 300 times now so far. What's one more time? All right. So now that everybody can hear me, I can actually get to the stream. Stream take 2. Okay, so I I told you guys to put stuff in the chat and tell me if anything was wrong, and then I'm like, and then I go directly to the live, I mean to the GM 911 without looking to see. Yeah, we're gonna just retcon that. Greetings, everyone. Nate the Nerdarch here from Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm by myself with the live chat, and I would just start it over, but I don't know how that's going to be. So we're just going to go with what it is, and maybe I can just shave off the first 2 minutes if I figure that out, how to do that. Anyway, we're going to get into some GM 911s, and you can also put your GM 911s in the comments, and I will get to those as well. I'm just going to dive into, for the expediency of saving time, unlike checking my mic, we're just going to dive into some of the comments, and and we're going to just go into some GM 911s. All right, so from Lincoln, help. I had a player bard who worships a god. Not such a big deal so far. They had started to tell people about this god and have gained a small following. That can be kind of dangerous, depending on what they plan on doing. I don't know how I can make this more interesting than just letting them gain new followers. In the world we play on, the gods rarely do anything, so they are not worshipped much. So for that instance, oh, thanks for helping. Well, if you do. Okay, well, I am going to help, and I'm going to have to direct you to this live chat about it. So basically, you've got a bard, worships a god. He's charismatic. He talks to people. People are like, oh, I also think this guy's pretty cool, and this god sounds pretty awesome. So he starts gaining a following. So I would treat the followers for the most part as just like general common folk. But if he does, make it kind of like mini quests to gain followers that are better than like the normal commoner that's like zero challenge rating. And from there, I would go and say you could have situations where they come to him, all the kind of like classic. You know what? You might want to just check out something like, normal problems priests or ministers have to deal with on a weekly basis. I'm sure they get the same questions over and over again about something. Well, does this god believe that such and such, or is the world now a donut because this god loves donuts? All those kind of things can kind of go into like, oh, is this god going to punish us for XYZ transgression, or do I think this is a transgression because of one word that the bard said that the god was about? So, there's all these just, I don't want to call them nuisance questions, but questions like common people have about, not making a deity mad, or not, doing right by, yes, Ivan, I know donut worlds could theoretically exist, just like black hole drives could theoretically exist, right? So you'd have this situation where the bard is kind of the teacher and the mentor of these people. He's basically like an old style like rabbi or teacher of these people. And so they're gonna, once they start following him for that purpose, he becomes like an elevated person amongst this social group. So that social group's going to look to him for guidance, direction, and his general opinion on things. They may even start picking up little nuances about him. And the player and both the character and the player might hate this, but he might have a particular style of clothing. Maybe he wears a sash, or if he plays a particular instrument, like let's say it's like not an expensive instrument, like the flute, have a whole bunch of his starting congregation of people play the flute. They all decide to pick up the flute because this guy who is like basically the connection between, you know, the common people and the divine, as far as these people see, it could develop into that. He could also tamp down on that and say like, oh, you're following me and you want to be taught by me, but you don't think I'm some kind of cleric. Even though a bard has spells, a bard has a whole bunch of knowledge, and a bard could technically, I mean, he's got cure. I mean, he's got it like everything he needs technically to fake being a cleric. So the only thing at that point is he could be like more of a person in faith that's also studious, or more studious than, you know, gains divine power. And you could also consider that since bards just know spells, that he is actually divinely inspired as a bard based on the god he worships. So those are all things that you could like bake into what's going on. And then kind of, you don't want to really make too much of annoyance about him having followers, but it could also be something that's driving the world. For example, if he gets quite a group of people together, eventually the people that are in power, whatever ruling class there is going to take notice and be like, why are the peasants all going to this particular place on Saturday or whatever? It's like, oh, that's because, you know, the lore master such and such, speaker for this particular deity, is over there talking on the hill. So that's gonna make the people that are in charge kind of perk up their eyebrow and wonder what's going on with this person. Because anytime you have a person in power, they usually aren't just set in power and they're in power. They usually have to hold on to it. And anytime they see someone who's just gaining power, they have to wonder to themselves, is he trying to take my job? Or is he trying to take my people from me? And passion-driven people, or people that are driven by faith and belief, that's going to supersede, oh, well, the Lord's technically in charge of us. Or if it's a feudal system, it's like, oh, well, the Lord, we're technically here for this lord or lady, and we do their work for them, and we get fed, and you know, we get food from our labor and stuff like that, and we have a house. But, you know, there's all this kind of issue where they could all leave that if the bard said, oh, I have a place we can all go. They'd be like, okay, we'll go with you. So that's kind of like what level of interaction you want with the followers. You can also just be like, oh, you gained some followers. If you don't want it to be a big part of your story, then don't have it be a big part of your story. Yeah, the gospel poison, the gospel according to Bard. So that's what I would go with. Is that kind of, you know, take it as far as the player wants, but don't have it supersede and go over all the rest of the quests that you want to do, especially if this isn't like a single player game where this is just you and the player. Like if there's a lot of characters, you're going to want those other characters getting a choice in what goes on in the game. So it could be something that just happens in town, and it influences, maybe because he started this, like people say, oh, well, you know, you go on dangerous journeys for our God. How about we give you this money to help you? Or here's food, so you don't have to pay for food. Or here, the person who owns the stable, this is a horse that someone paid for, but they passed away. And he's like, what am I going to do with this horse? I'll give it to the bard of our religion. So that's kind of, you could start getting benefits cash-wise, as well as places to stay when he goes places, almost like in the veins of the Acolyte background, but I would take that further. So that's what I would go with. And he might even already be an Acolyte. So just make it so that his benefit is a bit better if he already took Acolyte because he worships a god. So that's my suggestion for that. Hope that helps, Lincoln. All right, another one. All right. This is being DM playing our homebrew game. And he recently found a homebrew race called Mithric, which I'm not familiar with, and Jay really likes it, and he wants to let characters be it. But the other one, so he's bouncing this idea off the basically co-GM, and there's this issue with the other co-GM doesn't like the idea of having a flying character. But you know what? There's benefits to having a flying character, but there's places you can't use a flying character in. If all they do is fly and shoot a bow, or all they do is fly and shoot a missile weapon, there's a certain instance where there's going to be in real danger and probably get killed. So you're up in the air flying, and you're over the battlefield, and you're fighting people. Well, all they have to do is all turn to you and go, we should shoot that guy that's flying in the air and hitting us with fireballs and stuff, or hitting us with arrows. Let's shoot the archer. It's the same thing as if he was in a tree, all the archers would just shoot at him to get rid of him, and then they would move back to helping the people that are on the ground. So that's my thing with that. There are so many ways of dealing with flying, and it's not flying as a cantrip because it's a major part of the race. So I don't know how balanced Mithric is, but if it's basically Aarakocra with slight alterations to their other abilities, so Aarakocra have flying and this Mithric have flying. Well, if the other racial abilities are comparable to the Aarakocra's abilities, then I don't see an issue with substituting them in, unless the guy also doesn't like the idea of having Aarakocra. So if that's the issue, then that's going to be a disagreement between the two of you. So just why not have them not have fly? Do you know what I mean? Like if it's a flying character and they only can have themselves fly, then it's not fly as a cantrip, because fly does so many other things. Also, you have the situation where you have a certain level of speed. Okay, well, what's the speed? If it's the movement is the same as the flight speed, then that's not very fast flight. So there's all these things that go into creating a race. And again, I didn't get to check out Mithric beforehand because I didn't want to have to comment upon the rest of it. But basically, take Aarakocra and adjust some of the side abilities. And if it lines up and Mithric is the same, then it's like, it's considered balanced within the game, just like the Aarakocra are. But anyway, that's what I would say for you, Jay. And I will just let me know how it goes. But basically, it's not fly as a cantrip. That's not how it actually works. And there are other things about flight that are really detrimental. Just think, if you were in a first-person shooter or some kind of RPG game and you have to shoot something out of the sky, well, you probably kill it and if you're with 10 other people, they all kill it together. So it's like a bad place to be in a fight for a lot of reasons. Yeah, it's great against the ogre that doesn't pick up a rock and throw it at you, but it's bad in so many other scenarios. And dungeons. What are you going to do in a dungeon? Have your wings be in the way. So, yeah, underground, Andrew. Correct. And you could also just have flying characters as well, fight against them. You could have NPC Mithrics, you could have NPC Aarakocra, you could have flying creatures. Wyverns, they're going to snatch that guy right out of the sky and eat him after they sting him to death. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about that. All right, I know that the comments have been insanely busy. So if you have any GM tip, not GM tips, GM 911, definitely let me know. And I know it's kind of hard to shove it all into one group, like one little blip, but okay, question from Andrew Hurd. What should I do when my group keeps going to small towns that I put in my game and they keep taking them over? Okay. So, Andrew, when they take over small towns, if they're not evil and they're just like, we're going to say we're in charge of this, like some kind of, Western bandits, we're in charge of this town here, we're the boss, so you're going to have to just give us a certain amount of tribute every time we come by, that kind of taking over the town, then I would say eventually someone that's going to be stronger than them or close to as strong as them are going to come up and say, hey, you can't do this. Not like the blacksmith or something, but maybe there's a retired fighter in the town. Maybe he's not so great, but he goes, oh, this isn't going to fly. I'm going to call up my buddies, and you're going to get the whole party's going to get their butts kicked by retired paladins and stuff that live in the different thing. Hey, if you're in Tribes of Discordia, Griffin Gap area, some of the nag might show up to slap them around for doing this kind of stuff, because at that point they're stealing, pretty much strong arming people into giving them stuff, which is stealing. It's what's that? Burglary, assault, I forget it, battery, whatever it's called. But basically, it's definitely several crimes, and has been for a very long time, to extort stuff out of people and say, oh, but they gave it to us. So that's going to be a situation where they've broken laws, I would think, and eventually someone's going to send a letter to someone they know, and they're going to show up at the next town, or show up or be there waiting for you when they come back to a town. And they're going to be dealt with in some manner. Either they're going to have to pay a fine, or they're going to get slapped around. And then there's going to be issues with that. So basically, it comes down to, what would you think would happen to people in real life if there was magic and swords and all that kind of stuff, and someone decided every time they come into a town of like 500 people or so, they're just going to strong arm them into saying, well, we own this town now. Well, no, someone's going to take out some weapons and try and take care of them. And in D&D, they've got to be certain levels to deal with people. But eventually, they're going to come upon those people that have actually gained levels, or those people that are in the know or have connections somewhere are going to send letters to people. And those people that they sent letters to are going to come into the area, hunt them, and defeat them like they're just bandits, because that's what they're kind of doing. So repercussions for the game. Don't make it immediate. Don't make it immediate, because immediate repercussions is kind of like, no, you can't do that. And it's like more railroady. It's like, give them player agency to screw up. And I mean, you might even warn them, hey, guess you know what happens to people like this. And in fact, you might have defeated people like this in your past. But let them know that yeah, there's going to be issues. You might not have had anything happen so far, but is that like the bank robber who robs 7 banks and says, I'll rob one more because nothing bad's happened yet? Yeah, and then he gets killed. That kind of scenario can happen. Oh, and if you put question in the front, that really helps me know that it's not just everybody talking. It jumped on me. I don't know why. It just gets to a certain point and it decides, hey, let's jump to this next section. Okay, what is your opinion on something like immersion breaking in a more dark setting, such as a cow level in Diablo, in order to lift player spirits or prove confusion? All right, Brent again, McFinley. Immersion breaking is fine, I think, if it's dark setting or something, but you don't want to break them so much that they break them. You don't want to break them out of the immersion so much that it becomes a laugh fest, like everybody's goofing off, and then they tell jokes for the whole rest of the session. I think that's kind of, unless you had like a really dark session, because you're saying this is like a dark setting. So unless you just had like, you guys didn't save the villagers and now they're all undead zombies and there's Martha the baker, and like, unless you have one of those episodes where it's just like, yeah, we failed to save a whole town and we had to actually kill their undead bodies, and they had like relationships with all these people. You know, that's really dark. I would have something light after that. But for breaking immersion, you know, it's good to have something silly every once in a while, because silly stuff happens regardless of how serious things are. And that's something. It's not cinematic. It's not cinematic at all. I mean, nowadays it kind of is they're doing more realistic discussions and more realistic talks where someone says something just out of the blue and you're like, that doesn't really make sense. And there's like, it's not just dialogue that moves the plot along. It puts there's a little more realism and goofing off, goof-offery, and in the game. I mean, in the shows and stuff like that, and in stuff I've read. So I would say a little bit of I'm getting distracted by chat. A little bit of lightheartedness or something going on that they just find comically, even if it's like comedy, like macabre style comedy, something that's humorous. Like if you chop, like, okay, so if you're fighting zombies or whatever, and you chop a zombie's head off and it lands into the lap or the hands of another zombie, that's a description of what happened that killed one of the zombies. So you describe the combat, and something strange happened, which happens every once in a while. You know, when you're fighting, sometimes, like if you pinning someone's, you miss them, but you pin their boot to the ground and it made them trip. That's funny to think about. I mean, if you were actually really fighting for your life, it would be funny later, but it wouldn't be funny at the time. But it's funny as characters being kind of removed from that situation. So, an entire cow level, I don't know, like the cow level in Diablo was a lot, but I mean, you've killed so many things by the time you get to the cow level in Diablo. Hey, why not? So I would say, like, I don't usually use too many pop culture references, but if I can completely immerse the pop culture reference, so like maybe I'm taking inspiration for a particular character from a current living person. I mean, it resembles a current living person. It isn't actually the person, nor is it supposed to be a portrayal of the person. But you're taking inspiration from somebody. I'm going to make this character, and they're going to have the attitude of the real life Arnold Schwarzenegger rather than any of his movie personas. And you're just like, I just like that guy's personality for this particular person, and you're gonna portray him that. So maybe you give him an accent a bit, or you give him some other kind of known bits, but and maybe it's even his name is slightly different, but it's kind of like reminds you of Schwarzenegger. It's something hard to say like that. So you can have that, and that could be like a funny thing. Like whenever you interact with this guy, everybody kind of knows there's something up about him. He seems really familiar, but it's not something that's just overt and in your face all the time. So there's I think immersion breaking is okay. Just don't let it get out of control. Just like anything in your game, don't let them murder hobo everything in the world without any problems happening to them or conflicts. Don't let them just run rampant. There's a certain level of like the world has to feel a little more real than just some kind of like platform game. So in the same sense of breaking immersion, you have some kind of things that even in strange situations, they can be kind of funny, or even the situation, because it's so dark, the little hint of humor in it or irony makes it funny. And that's where I would go. The official pronunciation of Wyvern is Wyvern. Why, Doug? Oh, because Matt Mercer said so. Oh, all right. Okay, what are your thoughts on a wizard fighter? Hold, mass hold, grapple, burning hands. I do not. That's not really a GM 911. It's more of just like a rules question. So I don't even remember mass hold. Is that some kind of? I don't remember that as a spell. But if you hold somebody, yeah, you can grapple them. And burning hand seems kind of like a overkill on that part, Thomas. I'm going to need more clarification for what you're trying to ask me there. Doug, you're torn between hanging with us all in chat and finishing this Warlock options article. I understand. I'd have these chats last way longer than they did if I didn't have, 10 hours of work to do. Oh, hey, Lavoyer. Yeah, it's been a while. I hope everything's going all right with you. Okay. Aaron Marks. Greetings and well met. I'm having minor issues with stores and barter. My party wants to do this out of game, but I think higher value items might need appointments and negotiations. Okay. If there's something to be gained as the player, like if they play this right, they'll actually get a better deal, then yeah, I say absolutely. You guys want to do all the cash, the barter and store exchange out of game, kind of like, oh, it's the end of the adventure, let's unload all of our loot. That kind of works for low levels, but eventually, yeah, you're going to get to this point where you're trying to sell these really high magic items, and they're either going to have to pay a third party to negotiate the magic item selling, or they're going to have to be in the negotiation themselves. And if it's something that's like 30,000 gold pieces or something ridiculous like that, I mean, you can buy a small castle, I think, a keep or something like that for around that or a little bit more. Or you can buy a ship, like actually own a ship for that amount of money. So at that point, you're looking at something where the person might not have 30,000 gold, and they might say, well, how would you feel about, the sea sprite or something? We have this lovely ship that we're willing to trade from our merchant fleet. Interested? And that might actually be not the real sea sprite, but a crap one that they wrote sea sprite on and changed the name of it. And it's like sea sprite, the return or something. And the real sea sprite, which you might have heard nice things about, actually is over there. So you're probably going to have to barter to actually get the real sea sprite. Or if you go, oh yeah, the sea sprite, that sounds great, without knowing anything about a ship, because I mean, really, probably the merchant doesn't know that much about the magic item except that's really valuable, and he probably has a buyer for it. So he's going to make a profit once he trades you this junk ship, but it's going to not be such a good profit margin for him if you get the real sea sprite for them, and that's going to require some amount of negotiation and barter and discussion. And I think getting the players in on that is really good, especially because that way, when you cheat them in the game, they've been cheated and they know they could have done something about it. But basically, it's like they lost that combat. If you think about it, at the negotiation table as the battlefield, then you've got this situation where they lost the combat, so they didn't make as much money on the deal. And that's where I would go with it. I mean, I would not just be like, oh yeah, you walk into this town and you want to drop all this loot. This town doesn't have 10,000 gold, and you've got a 30,000 gold magic item. You've got all this money that you want changed into gold. So it's like, well, how many banks are in the area where you can take 100,000 copper pieces that you get from someplace and exchange it for gold pieces or platinum pieces? That's a lot of wealth. And that might be something that you just simply have to store someplace for a while before you can get it exchanged. Or you might have to sign a contract with a bank that says, oh, we'll take your copper pieces at this rate of exchange. And they might say, well, it's not one gold piece for 100 copper. You're going to have to give us 110 copper for this gold piece. Or if you're exchanging thousands of gold pieces, because at that point, you got to think about this stuff getting moved around, that the stuff doesn't get done for free. You got to feed the horses. You got to pay the guards to guard the gold, to move it, and all that kind of stuff comes up. So if you're looking to exchange major city size amounts of money, you're going to have to do something about that. That's going to have to be come into the understanding. Because if you were going to move all that wealth somewhere, you would hire people to help you out, or like at least people that move the wagons along and the horses and things. So that kind of stuff can come into play. So I would say negotiate like it's a fight. There's skill checks. There's the actual words that they're going to say, how they're going to negotiate. Be like, okay, I want to see if this person's trying to cheat me. Have I gotten the most honest person, or the first person to ask me if I'll sell this to them? Because the person that wants to jump on it first might be super eager because they know what it is and they're willing to pay, but they also might be super eager because they think you're a schmo and they think they're going to be able to get one up on you and make a steal of a deal and then double their money somewhere. And when you double in 15K, that's a big deal. Because like I said, that's a ship that's, a caravan of wagons and goods and having them make more money for you someplace. So that's a big deal. All right, I'm sorry if I skipped any because it's been jumping around on me a lot. All right, Armored Anathema. Question, going to be running the final battle of my Mutants and Mastermind 3E fantasy game. If I run the fight with phases, how do I transition each phase without it feeling unfair or dragged out? Ooh, it's Mastermind 3E fantasy. I have not played Mutants and Mastermind for a while. So I have to say I'm a bit rusty on phases and how that would work transition-wise. I would say anything that's going to make the fight last too long, you should avoid. And if you can tell it's lasting too long, you want to have, how can I kind of, almost Nintendo style, like the monster's flashing, like maybe if this guy's wearing armor, his armor gets messed up. Maybe he coughs up blood and he's like really beat, but he's still fighting, or that would be a good transition time. So I would say there's a transition time between when the characters are all going full tilt because they don't know how strong this guy is, and then when the characters kind of recognize, well, we almost have this guy beat, so do we just like slam him and slay him outright, or do we try and capture him, or do we try and interrogate him if we need information from him? So I would change that, like, there's the end, like an end phase in a sense, where there's a way to do the combat differently, where it could be skill check, well, not skill checks, I'm mixing my games here, where there could be the chance to do non-combat abilities on this person to either convince them to talk or some other thing like that. Because maybe that person's like, well, man, I'm going to get killed. I need to figure out, I need to get an exit strategy on this situation. Or they're just some, mindless automaton and going to fight to the death and die. So without remembering more about the system, that's what I'm going to have to leave it at. Question, how does Pathfinder work? A group using... I'm going to have to read that again, Ivan. How does Pathfinder work? A group using that system is starting up soon in my area, so I would like to know the basics. All right, Pathfinder is very similar to Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition, 3.5. And there's a lot of commitment to making the character for it. And there's a lot of little bits that you gotta do. So I would say it works very similar to 5e in the sense you're making a character, you pick your race, pick your class, but the character you want to end up with is harder to see in the beginning. So if you want a prestige class, or you want a particular, like Arcane Archer, isn't just being an Eldritch Knight and with a bow or something. It's there's prestige classes, so they're actually separate from the regular classes, and they have prerequisites. So it's going to work out like that, where you're going to have to kind of plot out what you want your end character to be. And I would suggest looking up stuff online about you know, if you want an assassin, what's all the stuff you need to be an assassin at like 15th level, and then say, well, then dial it back. Well, at 10th level, I'd have this and this, and then you can bring it all back to whatever level you're starting at, and that's how that's how I'd go about that compared to like 5e. The Badman question. I'm trying to figure out how I should play as a patron for the different options a warlock has to choose from, i.e. Fiend, Fey, and Great Old One. Any clarification for each? All right. Great Old One, I feel is like the easiest thing. That's like the otherworldly or cosmic horror, basically. It's just, if you think about it, the Great Old One, the concept of it is basically like stepping up the idea of a fear of the unknown and darkness and the unfathomable, like a super deep lake that you can't see the bottom. Well, in a place where there's actual monsters that can come out of that super deep lake, or a sea serpent could bite you while you're in a boat because you can't see the bottom. That's like that fear, that darkness or trepidation of the unknown. So basically a giant cosmic terror from some other plane is going to be that same kind of feeling that's like of depth and unknowing. And it's normally going to have some kind of interest. All these are going to have some kind of interest that they're going to try and kind of pull the warlock towards. Because I mean, the easiest way to get somebody to do what you want is to convince them that it was their idea in the first place. So I would think that the Fiend would do that through agreements, where basically it says, "Oh, you know, you've gained these powers. Now I'd like you to do this thing for me." And the Fae will probably, if you think about it, the Fiend and the Fae are going to be similar, and I think the Great Old One will be the most different, where you're going to have this this kind of direction of. I'm going to have to think about this a bit more, but I would suggest playing the Great Old One as hard to understand through. It might give you like flashes and images rather than talk to you directly. So I would say it might take you through dreams. It might take you through visions, which is it kind of like telepathically speaking with you. For the Fiend, I'd have it be where maybe there's certain areas where it's just easier to talk to your patron. Because the Fiend is kind of set out from the world and locked away in like the hells and things like that, or the abyss. So in that instance, I would say that it's maybe it has agents and it speaks through those agents, kind of like possession. Or so you know, the character that's the warlock might go to a region or a monastery, and one of the agents might be inside the monastery. So brother such and such wants to speak with you, and you're kind of like, well, that's kind of strange because I don't know brother Thomas or whatever. So brother Thomas comes up to you and he has a certain look in his eyes. Maybe his eyes are more dilated or whatever, or he might hand you an object and you'll get an understanding of the, like almost like a magic mouth or something. Or I would have it be more like where the influence monk talks to you as if he's the patron. And I would do that kind of like that. And for the Fae, I feel like anytime that the warlock is in a forest or a area that the Fae is linked with, in case the Fae is like a water Fae or something like that, then I would say that would be the way it's like it's able to contact, almost as if it's like those are contact points, things that are significant to the patron. While the old one, I think, would just simply probably talk to you while you're asleep, and while like in dreams, or if it really needed to say something to you, it'd talk to you in visions while you're waking dreams. I hope that helps. I wasn't prepared to answer that. Probably that could be a video, really, talking about that kind of stuff. All right, Morgan Bright, question. What would you do to the duration of spells when using the gritty realism timescale munched in the DMG on page 267? So short rests are overnight and long rests are a long weekend. Oh, okay. So a spell that's supposed to last 24 hours that you're not going to get for the rest of the week, basically. Okay, that's an interesting question. You know what? I'm going to have to say, I think it'll depend on the spell. For example, if something's supposed to last 24 hours, then most likely it's supposed to last. If it basically is supposed to last until your long rest, then it should probably last until your long rest. But that can be really powerful for certain spells, so I would stay away from that, except for the most like legitimate sounding ones, like mage armor. Mage armor, I think, lasts 8 hours. I would just let it last the whole day, because if they want to cast mage armor once a day, that's 7 first level spells before they can do a long weekend rest, basically. So, excuse me, you're looking at not a lot of, the normal protection that a mage would have just simply by casting their spells, whatever spells they want on the day, they're not seeing it. So that's where I would say, you might want to adjust the stuff that lasts more than an hour. If it's lasting a day or if it's lasting 8 hours, it's supposed to kind of last for most of the combat seeing time. Like if it's 8 in the morning, I'm going to cast mage armor. All right, well, it's now evening. Most likely we're sitting down for the night. So unless we get attacked during the night, the mage armor probably came into use during the combat somewhere. So that's how I would manage that. Is if something looks like it should legitimately last till you take a long rest, then I would just let it last until they take a long rest. Otherwise, there's going to be days where you cast spells and they're just not going to get any use. Or maybe that means that when you want mage armor, you're just going to have to cast it, and you're just going to waste a round casting mage armor, which that's not. It lasts 8 hours for a reason. It's because you're supposed to have already cast it. So that's kind of the situation where I would either extend those duration to 24 hours, or I would, and things that last 24 hours, I'd extend those durations as well, based on like what you think about it. I'm not going to go through all the spells that last that long, but there are some spells that just make sense. They should last until you're going to cast them again. And then from there, I would just say, otherwise you could say, well, you can cast mage armor like quickly. And like, I don't know, a bonus action or something. So it's not going to soak up their whole turn. It's just getting ready to fight. Because the wizard doesn't wear armor and he casts armor. So when he casts armor, it needs to be there for all the times he's going to need it. So a fighter just has draws weapon and fight. So fighter draws his weapon and fight. Bard does this. Thief does that. Mage casts mage armor. It's a really lackluster. That's a really lackluster first round of combat. Excuse me. I had to mute it because that was quite the sneeze. Okay. Oh, and Badman, if you haven't read them, there are some comments upon what we were talking about with them. So I even had some suggestions and things. Any tips on creating wondrous items, new wondrous items? I would go along the power level of what wondrous item is right now and consider that you may be able to just simply use, I didn't know I was just a floating head, not paying attention. Consider that you would just be able to use one of the ones that already exists and alter it. So if there's something, bowl of water elemental control, all right, and you want to control a fiend, well, then just have, some kind of medallion or disc that you can present to a fiend and control them. If basically go along the lines of how the water elemental control bowl works, and simply just alter it to suit your purpose of controlling X. Maybe it actually controls an entire race of goblinoids. So, it's like some kind of of subjugation or something. So I wouldn't necessarily go with. No, I'm going to retract that. So yeah, I would say those things. You know, check out what's already available, see if just altering it would do. And I don't mean making it more powerful. Like, do not make a +4 sword. There's reasons why we're going up to +3. It's due to bound accuracy, which is a really integral part of 5th edition. It really makes a big difference between 3.5 Pathfinder and 5e is bounded accuracy. So I wouldn't go beyond what the bounded accuracy is right now, and just go with what you think is cool, but what's not too powerful. So again, research what other wondrous items you have. Kind of say, well, this is the most powerful wondrous item, and this is the weakest wondrous item. So no problem making weaker ones, and there's no problem with making ones as powerful as some of the most powerful ones. But just keep in mind, if you wouldn't give a legendary wondrous item to somebody, don't make something as powerful as a legendary wondrous item, because it's gonna make it feel overpowered as well. Hey, I was not stabbing, I was sneezing. But that's funny. It is a Nerdarchy stab. Oh, thank you for the well wishes for sneezing. Yeah, and then if Loth was your patron, you'd have some issues going on. You better line up with all of her thoughts on what makes the best follower there. That's for sure. Or you might be a Drider, and that could be good. All right, got another question that we missed. So what would be the best way to RP a Mouth of Sauron type bad guy? Driven insane by the power of his lord and his goals that run tangent from it, such as proving pain for the party. Oh, okay. Mouth of Sauron, you mean like kind of someone who's been not like fully possessed by like an entity like Sauron, but yeah, you know what? I would probably use Madness from the DMG. Go with some of those as his character traits. Maybe he has just one particular type of madness from it, where basically the influence and the possession of this being in their body is breaking them in some way. So I would check out the madness charts in the DMG. I don't remember what page it is. Someone will know. And oh, that's from Bren again. I don't think I mentioned that. And issue is you can RP it as an NPC. If you RP it as a player character, you're going to run into issues where eventually there's going to be a player fight. And I hate player fights. They're a nuisance as a dungeon master. And they're I find them to be a nuisance to the actual table outside of the game. So I don't dig them, and I don't attempt to create situations in which that will occur. Because you can have disagreements as players, but once you have something that's obviously going to be a problem, you need to have an exit strategy for how that's going to not burn your table to the ground when it comes around to it. Let me know if you've got any other questions specifically about that. All right, StarCrafter 13 Terran. Question. Say you prefer to play in a campaign without all the multiclassing. What good is Rogue in 5e? I ask because it seems like anyone can be proficient in stealth and similar rogue skills. Well, you're going to get sneak attack, and there's certain rogues. I mean, there's certain rogue skills that are just better Rogues are the best at being rogues. I don't know. Stealth is not the only thing that a rogue has that is useful. I mean, once you start getting into prestige class, not prestige classes, archetypes, you're looking at assassin. They get some really great abilities. Arcane trickster gets access to magic. And Arcane Trickster is not just simply, there's stuff in Arcane Trickster that makes him better at being a mage thief than a mage thief. And there's going to be stuff in Thief that makes, well, so I should say Rogue. When you take the Thief archetype, there's things that you get out of Thief that are way better than just simply taking the skills. And one of the things is, I mean, I think it's called Roll with the Punch, or I just call it that, where you can half damage that gets dealt to you. There's evasion and all that kind of stuff. That would be, I don't know, that I feel like this is a similar question to what's good about monks in 5th edition, because people can take Tavern Brawler and get unarmored attack. So, I mean, it's just, yeah, you can punch like a monk punches and kicks like a monk kicks, but you're not a monk. I mean, they can jump higher, run faster, all that kind of stuff. PVR HYE. What's a good way to drop a hint to the DM that you haven't seen a magic item in 6 months? Talk about nothing except magic items. Oh, oh yeah. When they talk about, he or she talks about a new class or like a new archetype or something, or the new UA, be like, yeah, I heard about this really, there's this really cool magic item, or I heard about this really awesome game where they use the Darnowns into fortress or something, and we're besieged by an army of kobolds, or I don't know. That kind of thing, like say, show how cool, or talk about how cool magic items have been in other places. And maybe that'll drop the hint of, oh yeah, when was the last time I gave these people magic item? And you could also take the player initiative of saying, I want to look up myths and stories of the region. They've got to be around. There's either people talking in taverns. There's always this kind of like, oh, this person had an ancient sword, but they lost it when they died somewhere deep in a cave, killed by this monster, such and such. Kind of like a failed Beowulf story where this guy was cool. He had a cool weapon, or he had, a cloak that protected him from fire. And so he thought he was going to be safe from the fire-breathing Wyrn, but he wasn't. He got killed by the minions of the Wyrn or whatever like that. That kind of stuff. You can kind of basically look for those stories in character and role play looking for those stories. He's either eventually got to give you a story or decide what he's going to do on his end. So that's what I would say is, talk about cool magic items and the thing, not like you want to get a particular magic item, but just talk about different scenarios that have come up. But it's gonna have to not be forced. Otherwise, it's gonna be like, why the heck are you shoving magic items in my face? Well, why are you talking about magic item stories so much? Or you could just say, what kind of game is this? Like, not like, what kind of game is this? But what kind of game did you want to play? Talking to the DM. Did you know that you're basically making a low magic game? A low magic item game anyway. Is that the type of game you want? Is there actual magic items in this world, or is it like a real rarity to see one? And that's where I would go with that. So talk to them about, I kind of expected more magic items. I'm not saying give me one right now, but that I feel like that's a big part of the game. If we're not playing that, that's okay. We're playing whatever game you're playing, but I would say, kind of jumpstart some kind of conversation about it. But you could also do like dropping hints about things, like telling somebody else, not the dungeon master, but telling somebody else about a cool magic item story. That's you could start it off with that, because that might get the DM thinking, hey, I haven't had any cool magic item stories in my game lately. I should probably put something in. So that's how I would start it and see how it goes. Oh, okay. Sorry. Going back to, I was answering your StarCrafter question. So I must not see this in Critical Role. They stealth altogether around encounters. Well, there's probably some times where they have to stealth around stuff, and there's sometimes where they should just fail, right? I mean, what did they all take? Did they all have rogue levels and took stealth, or did they have backgrounds that gave them stealth, or what's the scenario in which they all have stealth? I don't even actually even know. I'm assuming they're not playing 5e, I guess, if they all easily have stealth. So the DM, this is the thing. They're going to have encounters that happen, and I'm a Lord of the Rings kind of person in the sense of, if I can avoid a fight, I'm going to totally avoid a fight. If I can run and reasonably still complete my objective that I have set for as my character, like what my character thinks needs to happen, if that can still happen without fighting somebody, I will do it. So, and if that involves sneaking around somewhere, I will try it. If that involves running away from somebody that I don't want to fight, I will do it. And by that I mean, if it's legitimate that I can get through the encounter without fighting somebody, I'll do it. But if I have to fight somebody, I will do it. But I prefer not to fight because people can die in fights. So if everybody in my group had stealth, as the dungeon master, if I saw everybody in my group tried to sneak, or they had pass without trace or whatever, and they used resources to try and get around a situation, I would let them, but I would just take that into account. That's just going to simply be an encounter that they didn't do. And so the adventure is going to be slightly easier, but it might not be. They might have skipped that encounter, but now, oh, I snuck past the first group of goblins, but now we're at the second group of goblins. And now we're sandwiched in between goblins when someone does something dumb, like does a thunder wave or just starts fighting or launches stuff that's really flashy. Like a lightning bolt can be seen for a while in a dark area because it lights up a lot of different, there's lots of shadows that get lit up, and even in like a forest, you're going to see a lightning bolt scorch across the way from quite a distance. So all that kind of stuff means that the goblins that you skipped backs, or they'll show up in a little bit. So there's certain times where stealthing is not going to actually be the best thing to do. And that's as a dungeon master, I can't do anything for what another group does. So if you're tired of watching them for that purpose, then I guess just skip the parts in which they just stealth past groups. But aside from that, that's just how they're playing. Because like I said, if I can sneak past somebody or just not interact with them and still win the day in a sense, then I would do it. As most of my characters, anyway. Oh, okay. So he is using pass without trace. Okay, I didn't understand that because I was like, Vex, is Vex in the chat? I'm like, no, there's Vex on the channel. So I'm guessing you like to see the combats in that StarCrafter. Well, I understand it would be annoying if you weren't interested in seeing like half of the game that's going on. So that makes sense. All right. Well, we have actually passed the hour by, and I hope I got to everyone's questions. If I did not, only the questions that I have not gotten to that I missed somehow in the chat, you can put them in and we'll go over them. Don't make extra questions. Don't do any of that stuff. And let me know what you think of having the live chats. I enjoy it. The live chat GM 911s because of our changes in our schedule. We don't seem to get in as many GM 911s as we would like. We haven't done them for a while, so we're trying to get all the GM number ones, which we have a lot of, together and to go through them. I mean, I could probably take the next month and just do GM number ones, and we would probably be caught up then. All right, missed question. David Bliss. I am a DM and I'm unwilling to give players magic stuff as I'm afraid it makes it OP. All right. Well, it depends on what you're giving them. If you're giving them, if you like how hard it is for the fighter to hit, and you like how hard it is for the mage to not die because they don't have like a rope of arc magi or something, or rings of protections or whatever, or bracers to defense. If you like how it goes right now and you don't feel like you want to change that at all or make it easier, then why not give them magic stuff that really isn't that special? I know it sounds lame when I said it, but I give my players magic stuff that doesn't matter a damn all the time, and they love it. In fact, they make up things that it could possibly do that they just don't like. I had a Hammer of the Moradines, which is a longsword that just makes a humming sound when it swings, a gong sound when it crits, and does bludgeoning damage. It's actually a giant tuning fork that is illusioned to look like a sword. And that was it. But they thought it was so awesome. They kept wanting to identify it and try and figure stuff out about it. So I actually made it better in the quest. Like, as they gained levels, they found out different stuff about it. And one of the things was, the tuning fork is actually a slotted key. It fit into an anvil, a magic anvil that would fabricate things. And you had to it was in a dwarven stronghold, and you had to basically be using it either as a weapon or tapping it on the walls to find the secret entrance. And it was actually a key to get in this famous smith's, only known as the Smith because he passed away so long ago, this famous smith. So it got you into the thing. And then it was like, there was like schema and all these different kind of designs for like repeating mithril crossbows, adamantium bolts. And those were some of the schemas. So if you made schema yourself, took it to the forge, the anvil, had the Hammer of the Moradines and slotted it in, and you also had the appropriate material, it would fabricate it as per the fabricate spell. So they loved that. And it was like, well, I can just say, you can't find the material, or you can't, like, if you want to make an adamantium battle axe, if you don't have enough adamantium, too bad. So I would just, if I didn't want them to make something that they made a schema for, I could just not give them access to that stuff. So there's like a way of controlling that. And as far as, and again, there was, I gave them boots, spider climb slippers. You know, who the heck cares? But the halfling rogue loved that. And the rogue can already kind of climb. So it wasn't really like a big deal, but now she could climb from the ceiling. So, I mean, that was like a super big deal to her. But it wasn't a big deal to my game. So there's stuff you can use, and there's magic items you can use that, you know, as long as you're not like focused on pluses to attack and damage and pluses to armor, you can make all kinds of cool stories and craft magic items and things like that. Oh, the other one was it was a dwarven rune stick. It was a brewer's stirring stick, and it had ancient dwarven rune recipes on it for meads, and it actually radiated magic. It was magic of preservation, but he didn't know that. It was transmutation magic. So he thought that by making one of the recipes on the stick and stirring it, he could make like some kind of magic potion or something. So I gave them something mundane that was still magical, and they created the magic item in their mind, what it could be with their creativity. And then, you know what? The best thing you can do at that point is make it kind of what they wanted. Not exactly, because you don't want it to seem contrived, like, oh, I just took your idea and ran with it. I had no idea what it was going to be. But no, it was a magic stirring stick. And you know what I said? It automatically makes good tasting brew, even if you're bad at making it. You could be like the worst brewer in the world, and you will make like blue ribbon level ale out of this. So this was like, I mean, it's a dwarven magic item. It's one of the, I would think, a really good dwarven magic item if you're a dwarf or if you just like good booze. So that's what it did. But you know what? I allowed later, as the runes were read and as different things were understood, and after he made a certain amount of batches, because he actually started selling brews. He actually made a side business. Like that was his business when he came back from adventuring, was running his brewery. And he had his secret ingredient room, which was just basically making a batch with the stick and then distributing it into the containers to kind of like seed all the brewery things. So it was a one-man brewing operation. He just had people like rolling barrels around and stuff. So that was like a side thing for him. And it was just because of this magic item. It gave him something to do when he got back from adventuring. And eventually he realized that after he made a certain amount, that different runes that were written in like different, like basically there was runes that he thought were just marks, but they were actually magical annotations that allowed him to actually create potions, very, very like alchemist level potions, like small healing potions and stuff like that, or like small level poisons. But he couldn't do that before. You need a poisoner's kit, all that kind of stuff for that kind of stuff. So that was like a little extra I gave it after a while. But he had already loved that magic item, and that was before I made it do anything that was actually relevant to the game. So that's kind of where you could start, and then you could just add things to it. Starcrafter, I like your channel at Nerdarchy. It's helpful to give different perspectives. Well, thank you. Sean Thomas, yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jinkers. David Bliss, you really love the Diamond Ones. Yeah, I do as well. So I'm actually really enjoying doing this kind of stuff. Zareth Game missed 2 questions. What I do about role-playing jitters and how to role-play a drow with a childlike innocence. A drow orphan, perhaps, that was taken in and treated rather nicely for being from a cursed race. That would be probably a good start, is have the background for that kind of thing. It says missed 2 questions. Well, where's the second question? Okay, role-playing jitters. This is the thing. Everybody gets them pretty much. Different people have them to different levels. Like I have anxiety issues, so I get them all the time, every time, pretty fiercely. But I just, after a certain amount of time, you're just like, yep, this is just something that happens. It's like being scared of heights. You like to the point where your knees become weak and you become dizzy when you see heights. So you have to move away from the ledge, or you have to move away from an area, or even like you're going to say like, oh, this is going to be deep, I'm not going next to it, kind of thing. Those are all things that, you build up over time, either from an incident like you fell or something like that. But that stuff happens, and interacting and making a fool of yourself in front of other people is, I think, a general fear people have, even if it's a little bit. So dealing with that is, just through experience is how I deal with it. It's just basically, it's like a muscle. You just have to exercise doing the thing that makes you jittery until you don't care about that you're jittery. And then eventually it becomes less and less relevant. So I used to not go play. Like when I got the jitters, Ted's wedding, Nerdarchy's Ted's wedding, I was going to be in the wedding. And I stayed up all night freaking out. Before the last day, I had to go get suited up. I had to go get measured and suited up. And that was kind of like, this is the last 24 hours I can get out of this. And I realized I had to get out of it. Like I was totally freaking out. But then, not too long after that, I was the best man in my friend Matt's wedding. And like I had a turning point. I basically had said to myself, I bowed out of this. I ditched this. Ted found a replacement because he has a lot of cool friends. So I ended up bowing out of it. But that made me realize how bad it was. Like, it was like in my face. Because before I just said, oh, I'm just going to skip D&D because I feel sick, or I'm going to not do this with my friends because I feel ill, or I just feel like really off. And that was all anxiety stuff. And when I had to bow out of Ted's bridal party, I was like, yeah, okay. I can't deny anymore that this is a problem. So over the years, I've just said, I'm just going to put myself in situations that I'm uncomfortable in. But it's the same thing with the roleplay jitters. I had them all the time, and you just get used to it. Like, I'm talking with you guys now, and it's taken a long time. If you see some of the early Nerdarchy videos, okay, I don't talk now that much in Nerdarchy videos because there's other people talking a lot, and everybody else is, Ted and Dave could talk. They could do videos by themselves, no problem. So they've always got something they can put input in. But in the early videos, I didn't talk very much because I was getting used to being on camera, even though no one was, no one was watching. It's just video recording, but it was still crazy and freaking me out. So over time, it's just something that now I can have live chats with people, and it's not such a big deal. I still like make everybody leave the house and get really like kind of like, oh, I've got to prep for this and that and stuff. And when I do fan games, I prep more than I have prepped for my regular D&D games, just because I need it to be like a certain level of calmness, because I'm going to be doing live stream games. So that kind of stuff, that's where I would say, you got it sounds so lame and annoying when you can't do it, but getting over role-playing jitters is just accepting that they happen and still doing the role-playing and doing stuff that helps you not freak out. Like, I prep for fan games, because it's just one less thing I have to worry about. Is after I'm prepped, there's descriptions I can go to if I have like a hiccup in my mind, like, oh, I don't remember what I'm supposed to do. Rather than freak out about, oh, I don't remember what I'm supposed to do, I can go to my notes and say, oh, I'm supposed to read this description, or I can talk more about this, or I can say, oh, you missed this, just let you missed this room over here, and you just remembered, so that they can go back and do content that they might not have done that is available. And as far as role-playing a drow with a childlike innocence, is he an adult, or is she an adult that has some kind of issue, or is it childlike, like it's whimsical, kind of like the Fae, like more Fae-like in the sense of more carefree? I guess childlike innocence, I'm kind of wondering, like, they don't know stuff about the world. Like, what's orcs? Why are they bad? Like, I don't know anything about them. So do you mean through innocence through ignorance, or innocence through whimsy and the Fae? So that's where I, decide which one you want to go with. And then kind of, I would explore looking up characters that actually do that well. Without seeming like really stupid. There are some characterizations of that is really dumb. Okay, Zaref Gaming. So if he's an adult, more like the Fae, then I would play him like very whimsical and more like childlike innocence. Like, maybe they don't have to really deal with stuff, or maybe they look kind of everything from a perspective of kind of like stuff doesn't really matter. Like, oh, I'm going to look at this butterfly because it's beautiful for the next hour. I don't care. That kind of stuff doesn't work, like doesn't bother them. But anyway, I don't know. There's all this other chatter that I don't know if I missed a question. Oh, question. Nordic Dragon 89. How would you make 5e deadlier without altering the game too much? Been thinking about making PCs gaining exhaustion levels when they get healed from 0 hit points. Death save DC 15 instead of 10. All right, death save 15 is really serious, because if they roll a 1, they've got 2 death saves. If they get damaged while they're at 0, that's another issue. So you can rack up 3 death saves real quick. And really, yeah, I would go with that. And getting healed from 0, giving an exhaustion level, I would go with that. That sounds legitimate. You got knocked down. you don't just get back up and jump right back into the fight without feeling tired from it. I mean, and getting down to 0, you're supposed to be injured enough that it's significant. So, because it's, I mean, you're bleeding on the ground, going to die kind of thing. So, you've taken a hit. It's not just you can't chalk it up to stamina anymore. You've definitely been hit, and you've definitely been wounded enough to die. So that's kind of getting an exhaustion level from being that grievously injured, even with magic healing. Yeah, sure, why not? I think that's a good addition. Doogie. Oh yeah. So what point should I introduce the idea of having a home to players? A home to players. They're gonna probably have to explore the world enough that they pick a place that they say, you know, this last hideout was so cool and it wasn't filled with dead bodies. Let's take it and let's put a new lock on the door. You know, there's a certain time where there was a place close enough to Griffin Gaff, and it was in the side of a mountain. It was this cool cave complex. It had basements and larders and all this kind of stuff. And once we cleared out the cultists, it was like, wow, this has got a hidden entrance and everything. Let's take this place. It's our base now. We haven't been back to it since. It's a once a month, 3-year-long campaign, and I've been to the place 3 times. And one of them was I go back to the base and do some preparations and herbal concoctions. So 2 of the times were the time we fought them and killed the guys in it, the cultists, and took the place, and time where I'm doing research, and time where I've made stuff. That's it. And I think one time people said they were hanging out in the base, but that's it. So, I mean, it's just really a place to hang out in that's not in town. That's also kind of like a cool hideout, it's like a superhero hideout. So I would say in the beginning, they could have a home in the sense of a place that they go to, maybe a patron's keeping them up, or maybe a person is helping them with just general expenses and things. Maybe they're part of a guild. Maybe the guild hall has homes associated with it or places to stay. Maybe there's a particular inn that maybe they saved an innkeeper's daughter or something, or a son, or saved the innkeeper himself. And he says, yeah, you've got rooms for the rest of your life. They're here when you want them. I'll kick the people out, you know, like that kind of thing. So that's the place. And they just have like a little base camp. So a base camp that they can always go back to is rather nice, but I wouldn't say it has to happen at a certain time. I would entice them with certain ones. If you're interested in having them have a home operation. Otherwise, you know, just if they find a giant case of gold, that could be one of the things. Hey, you know, there's a house for sale. Like when they go into town and they say, oh, what am I going to spend my gold on? And they say, oh, well, I want to buy plate mail, and I want to buy this, and I want to buy that, and a wagon, and a horse, and a donkey, and a cat, and whatever. And then they're like, oh, what else am I going to buy with my gold? And they see that's when they can be like, oh, there's a for sale sign, like lot for sale, or these lots for sale. And that could be the way that you do that. So, and it could be like, oh, I'm not interested in buying a house then. Then you've got your answer. They're not interested yet. Yeah, AJ Kinley. Yeah, everybody definitely gets the jitters from time to time. It's just how well you can deal with it, or how much it affects you, that you have to consider with how you act. All right, something I wanted to mention is tonight. I mean, this evening. Okay. Let's start over. Before we go, I know I've been going over, but I'm having fun, so whatever. Before we go, there's something I want to tell you, guys and gals. There is a thing going on with, there's going to be a live chat tonight. It is going to be, I believe, 5:30, like California-ish time. So it's going to be 8:30 Eastern. I mean, just look for, I mean, that's the kind of like, the starting time we think it's going to be. But I believe Nigel and Ted are going to be interviewing people from the Gamers, somebody from the Gamers, if you guys are familiar with that. I am screwing this up. I should have wrote this down. Here's an instance where I'm kind of panicking. So, yeah. So check that out. It'll be put on Facebook. I'm sure it will be a notification. It'll be on Twitter. So if you know us from one of those things, we'll put it in the nag. If you know us from one of those things, you'll see a notification about it. It's going to be Eastern Standard Time, 8:30, I believe. And so that's going to be an interview tonight. So keep an eye out for that. TrueMate, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, US. It's not all of them. I don't know who it is from it because I'm not the person interviewing them, and I'm like, it's third party. I know that we're interviewing these guys. I know it's the Nerdarchy channel, and I know I'm part of Nerdarchy, but you know, stuff lost in translation and things. The Living Skit. I've already discussed this earlier on about a player who worships a god and doesn't interact with the world. This is a very similar question, just word it differently. So check earlier in the live chat. It's one of the first after my silent part where I messed up. Check earlier in the live chat. You'll be able to see the answer to your question, Living Skit. Because if one of your party members hadn't already asked it, it's pretty much that exact question, amazingly. So check it out. Oh, High Roller. Party killed a vampire and stole his castle. Excellent. Excellent base operations. Why not? All right. So, yeah. With the name Nerdarchy, we are disorganized. We're decentralized. We're decentralizing. Nigel actually talked to the people to get the interview, so it wasn't Dave, me, or Ted. So, yeah. Underwater base would also be awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to head out. So, TrueMate, I'm sure I'm going to do a live chat other time this week. So when you're around to ask that question again. All right. So let me know what you think in the comments below. While you're at, like, share, and subscribe. Thanks again to everybody that has helped us out, get the guys to LA, and also our Patreons and anybody that likes, shares, and subscribes our stuff to get it around the internet. So yes, 8:30 tonight Eastern Standard Time is 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, USA. So that's what I know as the schedule. So it may change based on people's scheduling, but you know, look for notifications on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, that kind of stuff. Company of the Nag if you're part of it. Right. So until next time, stay nerdy.